and welcome to part 33 of Summoner. Now, before we head on to the forest, the big dungeon here, I want to settle a few side quests in a few random encounters here. Now, first of all, this encounter, it was a travelling merchant, so this doesn't really involve any side quests, but I bought a rather useful item here, the Debasa, or Debaser. It's a blunt weapon, fairly powerful, and it also has the ability to trip enemies, or at least humanoid enemies, and that is a ridiculously useful weapon. And honestly, I would, you will get these later on, but yeah, pretty much those the Debasa pretty much becomes my go-to weapon near the end of the game. And we talk to the Giamatti here, and what's interesting, they give us a bit of backstory on Medivh again. You know, it's really in a bad place, and they're actually refugees fleeing from the demons. And that's a nice touch when you meet characters which sort of fill in the story. You know, they help flesh out the story. So anyway, speaking of these random encounters, yeah, you do need to find certain ones for these side quests here, which can involve, you know, an hour or two wandering around the map. Now this side quest, Pursued by Death, is a side quest you activate by finding this person in a random encounter. Although this guy is fairly common, so you should meet him eventually. So anyway, this guy, his basic story is that death has appeared to him in the form of a cat. So you obviously need to find a way to help keep this cat distracted. And he explains here, he tried jokes and riddles. You know, the cat laughs or wonders about the riddle, and then he manages to flee death. It's a really interesting story. It goes back to mythology as well. In fact, I can't remember the exact story, but it does remind me of like this fable where someone makes a deal with the devil, and he essentially gets a year of prosperity and a wallet, which if anyone tries to steal money from it, their hand gets stuck. And of course, a year passes, and this guy gets a year of wealth and prosperity, and somehow manages to trick the devil into getting his hand stuck in the wallet. And he's like, if you want to get your hand out of the wallet, you'll have to give me another year of prosperity. Which, yeah, it doesn't seem like a very good idea to mess with the devil. But this is kind of a similar situation. But anyway, part of this side quest is you talk to the fisherman here, and he tells you of a solution, and that's to actually give the cat tree bark. And I've never heard of cats eating tree bark. I mean, isn't it dogs that like bark? That was terrible. Yeah, but yeah, speaking of which, you do get this sort of tree bark in the forest dungeon coming up. And then you have to give the bark to Alang, or the cat. But we'll see how this side quest plays out when we do meet up with these guys again. Okay, enough of random encounter. Now, Aurenia, it's got less diversity than Medivh. You can see you have these random encounters, and you have this sort of a field encounter and a desert encounter. So really, there's only two environments. Now this encounter here is, you can see, how can I explain this? But the encounters you get are random, but they are specific. Like for example, this encounter of these rockles will feature a specific item. So if you're wondering, how do I get these items? Just notice the enemies I encounter here, and this should explain it. The Sparrow's Egg item you need for the Nandi the Gatherer quest is in the night encounter with the Rockall. So that's essentially what I'm trying to get across, that specific items appear in specific random encounters. Now these rockall here, yeah, they're fairly weak. Oh, here's another item I wanted to show off as well. The Ring of Thieves, which you get from defeating these rockall in this encounter. Which will raise your stats to about 3. Quite useful. And yeah, that is actually a useful item, because you know, raising a stat 3 points upwards is ridiculously useful. So anyway, now that we have the Sparrow's egg, which was actually a plant rather than an egg, we take it back to Nandi here. And after this, our side quest isn't quite over, because then she sends us out to get the Giamardi's cloak. So yeah, this part here is just mainly sorting out these side quests before we head on to the dungeon. Now honestly, she does give us a potion for completing this side quest, but I don't think it's too useful. But I do actually like the idea of it. You know, journeying across the place to find all these items to make a magical potion. Okay, now this encounter is where we'll find Giamardi's cloak. And you want to be careful, because you are surrounded by these enemies called the Oni, which is kind of like a Far Eastern version of demons in general. Of course you have the female Oni, which are fairly strong, but the male Oni are stronger and bigger, and not to mention the sort of shaman Oni you see here casting magic spells. Now of course these enemies here, they're essentially the main enemies we'll see in the forest coming up. So you could use this as a sort of preview, I guess. Now even though they look pretty monstrous, they are vulnerable to the old trip and backstab technique. And of course this is good advice in general, but always keep the shaman busy so we can't heal his allies. But yeah, these Oni, they don't really have a specific weakness, they're just generally hard. Oh Felicia, so awesome with your backstab ability. So yeah, again, I've said this before, but you want to save after every random encounter, just because, like, for example, if this one took you by surprise, I could easily imagine getting overrun with these enemies. But yeah, after killing a few of these guys, we're up near the river. And I must say, I like how different Aurania looks. I mean, it's got like sort of purple rocks, and you can see they sort of went for like an old Japanese art type of style. And it's really appreciated. It makes it look different from Medieval. Yeah, it's just nice to see different settings. But anyway, up near the river here, we'll see the Giamardi's cloak. Named after, of course, the Giamardis, which are essentially this universe's version of gypsies. And I mean, like the old-fashioned Romani gypsies, because they travel all around the world. They have long, colourful clothes. Now, after the cloak, she will send us out for another item, which is called Bane's Kiss, which can only be found in the forest. So yeah, now that we've got that set up, there's just one more thing I need to do here. Now, like I said before, this game has different environments, one of them being the desert encounter. Now this side quest here, it's probably one you've forgotten about, because it was given to us all the way back in the very early parts, in the monastery of Iona. But yeah, this one is called Tefel the Wanderer. We were given a book there, and we just hand it over to him. Now, what's good about this side quest is that it also feeds into another side quest, because after we give him the book, he gives us a sort of a blue, the blue dragon scale. So that's very good of him. And we are given this rather interesting backstory. It must be pretty dangerous to be a vagrant in medieval times, because they used to hang people for that. I'm not sure how they would establish who was a vagrant or who was just a traveller, but yeah, if you hanged around without a job or something, yeah, they would probably hang you for that. Although I guess that was just in the more extreme cases.
I have gained new insight.
I do wonder if I end being over-leveled with all these, with all the experience points I get from these side quests. But oh well, that's part of the game. I'm looking at this desert theme, and it's got sort of Arabian music, which is obviously a theme they run with in the next game. Yeah, so the blue dragon scale, I think it gives you a bonus on your ice abilities. Pretty decent, actually.